Okay, hello and welcome to this DVW Analytics webinar. As you can read on the screen, we're going to be talking about S for HANA and how our connectors for SAP build the bridge between all types of S for HANA systems and Alteryx. Just to give you an idea of the type of areas that we're going to cover, just a quick look through the agenda. You can see that after a few introductions, we'll just have a little Q&A with my colleague who's on the call, and just to debunk some of those myths around HANA. Many of you may already know lots about HANA, others less so, so hopefully we can bring everybody up to speed. You can see the rest of the agenda is then about different tools, different ways of accessing HANA, and hopefully we can show you lots of ways of doing that and give lots of ideas to push you forward. So let's start with some introductions, some housekeeping. Firstly, obviously the webinar is being videoed, and we'll send that out to you. If colleagues have missed the video, they'll get it too, as long as they've signed up. But feel free to share that. The only other thing is that within the webinar, you can add chat. So if you want to ask questions, feel free to do that. We will try to address them during the course of the webinar. If we can't, then we promise to get back to you and make sure that we answer any questions that you have. Okay, so that's a couple of introductions. My name's Ian James. I'm on the right here. From the DVW Analytics commercial team, and I'm happy to say I've got our CEO here, Darren Walton. Darren, do you want to say hi?
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Hi, everybody. Darren Walton here. Unfortunately, my photograph is maybe fortunately, my photograph there is very, very soft focus, whereas Ian looks like he's spoiling for a fight of some form. So we'll see. We're still friends at the end of this session.
Yeah, it might. A few question and answers, maybe. Let's see what happens here. Okay, so let's go into the first section, debunking the myths. And basically the way we're going to do this is very quick, hopefully pretty quick, some questions and answers, questions that, maybe stupid questions or more in depth, but I'll ask the questions and hopefully Darren's going to be able to answer them. So here's the idea, you'll get the idea. So let's start at the beginning. So Darren, what exactly is HANA?
What is HANA? Thank you, Ian. So hopefully we've prepared for this well. So look, I think the key thing with HANA is HANA is an SAP developed and owned technology. And fundamentally, it is a very modern, ultra fast form of database. That is it. So from the standpoint of what we do within Alteryx and SAP, whether it's HANA or not doesn't matter too much, although it does bring some additional capabilities to our solution and also our solution within Alteryx, which is interesting to people. But fundamentally, HANA is a database. It's an in-memory database. I suspect or believe it's probably developed by SAP a few years ago. It's been around for a few years now, really to try to, from a commercial perspective, really to try to cement more of the area within their customers' organizations. Historically, SAP customers have used Oracle databases or Microsoft databases on running with the SAP technology on top. Today, with the latest batch of SAP S for HANA solutions and a lot of the more modern cloud-based solutions, HANA is the database that underpins that. So essentially, it's a database and nothing for us to worry about too much about.
Yeah, of course. That's a great answer. And what about the chair?
Well, I love the chair. Would you like to explain the chair?
This is an old joke from many years ago, because Darren and I have worked in SAP for far too many years, and when HANA first emerged, the joke was that everything in SAP was run by HANA. Everything was stamped by HANA, and even the chairs in SAP Central were HANA chairs. Anyway, it's a silly joke, but anyway, let's move on. Okay, so we talked about HANA. So what's the difference between HANA and S for HANA?
So it kind of harkens back to a little bit of the joke, to be honest with you, because HANA has also become a bit of a brand, which has been used by a lot of the SAP products. And in most cases, the SAP product with the word HANA in it does actually use the HANA database, but that wasn't always 100% correct, but now it is correct. So SAP S/4HANA then is the latest version of SAP's ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning software. So this is akin to SAP ECC or ERP, going back in time, SAP R3, going back even further, SAP R2. So it's the latest iteration of SAP's Enterprise Resource Planning product. I know that ERP is a term, it may be out of fashion or slightly out of vogue these days, but this is fundamentally what it is. And the key thing is it's an ERP product that leverages the capabilities of the SAP HANA database. And I think this slide here, I think we sourced it from a blog on the web, distinguishes the two things quite nicely. It says SAP HANA is the brain, while SAP S/4HANA is the business suite that puts that brain to work. So we can't really have S/4HANA without HANA, but HANA without the S4 part of it is just a database. Okay.
Perfect. Okay, so I think we wouldn't be here if this wasn't the case, but can DVW connect to S/4HANA?
Yeah, it's the lowest. It's the softest. It's the softest question here. Of course, it can. But I think there are some things for us to point out in terms of the technology, how our technology works within Alteryx, and also where it's applicable for us to connect to HANA or not. So, SAP S/4HANA today has three main variants that are available publicly, and the key ones would be SAP S/4HANA. This is an on-premise SAP solution that is installed, maintained, and run either by your own company or by one of your outsourcing partners. Okay, so SAP S/4HANA on-premise is, if you like, the direct comparator to SAP ECC, SAP ERP, SAP R3, and so on and so forth, going backwards in time. Over the last couple of years, SAP, like a lot of software vendors, are pushing more aggressively into cloud, and more of their key products are becoming available within the cloud. And therefore, we also have two cloud editions available to us today as well. The first one of those is called the Cloud Private Edition. So this is hosted by SAP, but you still have the flexibility and extensibility of the product in the same way as if you're running SAP S/4HANA in the traditional on-premise type of mode. So if you like, it's cloud-based, but it's functionally very rich from a development and extensibility is very, very rich. And its intended target audience is large enterprises. And most of the folks on the call today, you'll be working with or for large enterprises. So Cloud Private Edition and on-premise, just view those as kind of equivalents, but the deployment is slightly different. Cloud Public Edition is an interesting one, and this is really targeted at SMEs. Now, in SAP terminology, SMEs are still quite large organizations, but the Cloud Public Edition, imagine, is like a Cloud Private Edition with a bit of a wrapper around it, which means that certain extensibilities are not possible and certain functionality may be a little bit restrictive. It's still fully functional, but it's like the target audience or target market is a slightly smaller organizations. Now, DVW with Alteryx and our connectors, we can work with SAP S/4HANA on-premise, the SAP S/4HANA Cloud Private Edition, and the SAP S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition. Right, zero problem, full functionality, lots of capability there. For completeness here as well, we've also added a couple of the other key HANA-based products. There's SAP BW on HANA, which is still sloshing around out there in the world today, and the latest iteration of SAP BW being SAP BW for HANA. So again, whereas SAP S/4HANA is like ERP running on the HANA database, BW for HANA, as the name suggests, is an SAP BW system running on a HANA database. Now, we interact with all these different systems here via what's called the SAP application layer. So this gives us the mechanism through which we can communicate from Alteryx to the SAP system and interact with different objects within those systems. On the far right here, there are some instances where an SAP customer has implemented a standalone SAP HANA database for a very specific purpose. For those standalone SAP HANA databases. We don't offer connectivity to those today. For those type of databases, you are going to have to use an ODBC type of connector to work with them. But by and large, the majority of you folks on the call today, you'll be working with SAP S for HANA. Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. That's very clear. Is to me anyway, but anyway, hopefully it is for everybody else.
Thanks.
Very good explanation. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So anyway, we can connect. Is it easy to connect? And more to the point, can business users access their data from S4 HANA or the other HANA systems in an easy way?
Yeah, and absolutely is the answer. So many of you on the call today will be using our software with maybe SAP ECC systems, SAP BW systems, older versions of the SAP products. Some of you are already working with SAP HANA, SAP S for HANA to some extent, and absolutely yes, right? So the same key capabilities that we offer to SAP ECC and BW is available to S for HANA and BW for HANA. So yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
No. There's a bit more to this slide. It gets there, and I take full responsibility for the following graphics. But
yeah, and I think what we've seen through certainly the rise of Alteryx and the rise of the citizen data scientist, and even business users becoming much more ambitious in terms of what they can do using a platform such as Alteryx. So a lot of those jobs or activities that typically go in some sort of development queue in old world, that's no longer required, right? So we're enabling business users to get access to data that they want to get access to in the form they want it, when they want it, without any load on the IT team. And this allows the IT guys to really focus on the hairy stuff, right? Implementing the new version of SAP products or implementing other things. So everyone's happy.
Perfect. Good all around. Good news all around. That's what we like. Yeah, and then probably one of the last ones here around the Analytics Cloud, SAC.
Yeah, so SAC. Yeah, thanks, Ian. So SAC is a relatively new SAP product. We're starting to see it being used more and more by our customers, particularly those who've already made the journey onto SAP S for HANA. It has certain capabilities, but we're already having requests to work with that, interact with the SAC system itself, either from a read perspective, either getting data from SAC out into Alteryx, where we can use the capabilities of Alteryx to manipulate that data, but also in a number of different scenarios, the ability to write data back from Alteryx into SAC as well. So yeah, it's fully supported, and we're ready for it when you guys start running it in anger within your different businesses.
Fantastic. Okay, you're off the hook. They were good answers, I think. So thanks for that clarification. Well done, sir.
10 out of 10. Perfect. Yes.
Well, yeah, 9.5. Anyway, so so let's start with the basics in terms of connectivity then. So what we want to look at first in this section is to look at the standard connectivity that we offer to S/4HANA systems. And Darren, do you want to talk to this too?
So those of you who already know about our working with our product, our ACS product, and running it with ECC, ERP, we have capability to pull data from tables and table views. We have pulled data from transaction codes and reports, the SAP spool, queries, attachments, all these different types of things. So all these kind of things that you may already be used to and familiar with our software, these still exist in the SAP S/4HANA world, all right? So that doesn't go away. You can still access data from tables, you can still run T codes and access data from those. If you're running BW, you can still utilize BW even in BW for HANA, all right? So all that capability exists still, which is great. What's interesting about S/4HANA is actually opens up some additional capabilities for our software. From the read or extraction side, and one of the key demos we're going to show you later today is the ability for us to work with SAP Fiori Apps. So Fiori is like the newer user interface. SAP GUI still exists for those that use it, but SAP Fiori Apps is where the development effort is going into from SAP, and this is intended to be the business user interface into an SAP S/4HANA system. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of Fiori apps available, even standard within SAP S/4HANA. So this is going to create some really interesting opportunities for you once your company is utilizing SAP S/4HANA. So Fiori Apps is one of those. The other area would be HANA Views. So the feature of the HANA database is this flexibility around in views that sort of pull together data from different underlying HANA database tables, apply calculations, analysis to those, and allow them to be exposed to the user community from a reporting perspective. So these HANA views we can also get access to using the DVW ACS software today. OData has become more important in the cloud-based solutions that SAP run. So maybe the public cloud is something that you guys are going to be implementing for S/4HANA, or maybe in one of the non-ERP based products. Maybe you're implementing, or I've implemented, customer experience or success factors or something similar. So the ability for us to extract data via OData services into Alteryx is also a big feature and very important. And finally, on the extraction side of things, we can utilize the REST APIs used by SAP Analytics Cloud to get data from that solution for you to work with within Alteryx. So interestingly, the rise of SAP S/4HANA actually increases the possibilities for you to access different data sources, within your SAP system. And then just to talk a little bit about writing data back into SAP. We're having an increasing number of our customers who are using Alteryx and DVW to support sort of various process automation or even data migration types of use cases. SAP S/4HANA still has BAPIs, still has iDocs, but on top of that, we also have now OData, particularly again for the public cloud editions, as a mechanism to load or update data in a target SAP S/4HANA system, and also that good old REST API for SAP Analytics Cloud is available to us to update data into that particular solution. So a lot of additional capabilities are becoming open to us.
Fantastic. So lots of possibilities there. I think what we'd like to do now is just maybe show just some standard things. So I'm very much aware that quite a few in the audience will already be aware of our tools, but some won't. So let's show you the basics, okay? And many of our users start with looking at SAP tables or T codes. So let's do a quick demo, which is down to me. And if I can find my Alteryx, I can show you some table and T-code access. Just to give you a background, Alteryx Designer obviously here. Our tools, our software is an add-in to both Alteryx Designer and to Alteryx Server. I'll show you something on the server a little later. Let's start with a nice blank canvas. The way our tools work is to use the additional software, so these additional toolbars, which cover off some of the, all of the functionalities that Darren's just been talking about. We always start by logging into our systems. It's a bit like the SAP GUI, if you like, the logon pad. If you haven't come across this before, I've got lots of different systems here. Let's pick my S/4HANA system. You can see I log on with a username and password. Could be single sign-on as well, so that's fine. I can ping the system, check everything's set up correctly. It is, so then I can move forwards. I just drag in then a tool. This is a report tool or a T-code tool that you can see here. And I basically start to configure it. So FBL 3N, those in finance will recognize GL line item report there. That's talked to the SAP system, the HANA system there, checked it's a proper T-code. And now I can run that T-code within Alteryx, directly within Alteryx. So this is the parameter screen that I would get in the SAP GUI, but I'm getting it here in Alteryx. So I could, in theory, add in a company code, a GL, or a list of them, some dates, even a layout, okay? I also, however, and if you're doing a demo, it's very useful, you can use variants, okay? So these are saved variants over on the SAP side. I can run this with that variant, or I can copy those values into Alteryx so that I can manipulate them on this side. So here are the values that were stored over on SAP. I can even do a little sample. So I do a sample data preview. It runs the T-code, brings back some of the data, so I get an idea of what the output's going to look like. In true SAP style, if you run a few of the older T-codes for sure, It's not the prettiest thing and not the greatest thing for analytics. However, the tool itself can do lots of tidying up. So this little table here, we can see, hey, here are the headers. So let's mark that as a header row, and that color codes here. You can see the header values that are outside the data. It's great fun trying to get those inside the data on Excel, but in here, it's just a couple of clicks, and they will be brought from the header into the actual data itself. Blanks and dashes are ignored automatically, and these totals here, we can ignore too, because if we ignore this row, then it picks up that there's a little asterisk which is different to the data, and anywhere it sees that, it's going to ignore those. What's good here then is that you can confirm the layout. You can see exactly the data format that's going to be passed down into Alteryx, much cleaner than the initial output from SAP. You can save that configuration, and when you run this now, if I just add a browse tool, just a standard Alteryx browse tool, it's going to run the T-code after logging on, obviously apply all the rules before I can even think about finishing talking. It's extracted that data and it's ready to use in Alteryx. Okay, so that's a very quick how fast you can get your T-code data across into Alteryx. Similarly for tables, really fast, easy interface. This is one of our standard, I think there are around about 70 or 80 of these standard templated workflows available on the Alteryx gallery. You can bring those in. Obviously, they're great starting points. This one by far is the one that's mostly used. Again, it's in finance, but you can see very common sort of table structure with a header and a segment table. What's nice here, it highlights one or two of the functionalities. First, obviously the table tool, you can see you can be very prescriptive about the columns that you want outputted into Alteryx, so we don't have to have a big wide output. We can reduce that. Equally, we can filter on absolutely any value. I've applied a filter on year here, simple, but it could be multiple values in here. Once that's done, you run the tool and it's going to give you the output you want, filtered as you need, and we can pass that downstream. Now, what else is nice here is that we can also use another one of our tools, the filter tool, and this does what it says really. It takes the input, which is the header values, and it creates filters that the line item table will understand. Okay, so for instance, for these particular company codes and years, bring me these accounting document numbers, and then the next group and the next group, and it will pass those filters into this tool dynamically. So all we're getting in terms of line items are exactly the ones that match our headers. Once they're extracted, we're in the land of Alteryx, so we can do exactly what we want. We can make a join, a very simple join between those two tables, those two table outputs, and we have the data, the full picture, if you like, of finance. And there it is. So that's a quick tour of the basics, as it were. So let's flick back to the slide pack, and I think we've got another talking point from Darren.
Yeah, thanks Ian for that. Quite a few questions actually coming through, which is great to see. Yeah, so we talked a little bit earlier about the idea of different connectivity to HANA, right? And so we're interested in SAP S for HANA predominantly in this particular call here. And we connect to SAP always via what's called the application layer, right? In SAP using standard RC libraries. And the point of doing so is, one, it's a very established mechanism for connecting external products into an SAP system. But 2 and 3 are that number 2 is that it means that the form of connectivity means that the governance and controls built into the SAP system are automatically respected by our software. Okay, and this includes things like authorizations and accesses. All right, so by utilizing the application layer, we connect very safely to SAP, we can do no harm to the SAP system, and so on and so forth. So it's a very clean, safe way of connectivity to SAP. Now, ODBC is a separate mechanism that SAP do offer, and is offered via Alteryx. So I want to raise it with you here. Now, the issue with ODBC is there's a couple actually. Number one is the licensing. Okay, so you need a very specific type of license from SAP in order to connect via ODBC to the HANA database. Okay, and in most cases, we find that the cost of that deters most customers from following that approach. For those that do and have purchased that kind of connectivity, there's some limitations in ODBC. ODBC by its very nature is a much more technical type of connectivity with restricted functionality, and it requires an SAP expert and a SQL expert to really interact with the SAP system via the ODBC connector. Now, if you have that, fantastic, knock yourself out, go for it. But what we find in our target market for a lot of our software is business users, right? We don't want business users connecting to SAP via ODBC. So this is kind of some of the decisions you have to think of and make. Also, the richness of functionality that we offer through our product far exceeds anything you'll ever get via an ODBC connector as well. Our T-code capabilities, our Fiori app capabilities, our views, all those different kind of capabilities that we're offering through our solution are quite different to what you'd get through a standard ODBC connector. There can be some risks with a badly formed SQL statement in terms of pulling too much data, where the system is not properly protected. And about a third of our customers today are using our software alongside SAP S/4HANA, but as more SAP customers migrate onto S/4HANA, that number and percentage is kind of increasing pretty frequently at the moment. So we'd say, by all means, take a look at ODBC. If it works for you, go for it. But from experience, we'll find that our companies who look for this initially tend to come back because of the safe way that we connect via Alteryx, the fact they respect authorizations, the fact they respect the safety belts, and also the richness of the functionality that's offered through our solution.
Perfect. And I guess with 2027, the clock is ticking as support for ECC declines. So more and more we'll be looking for solutions on HANA, on S/4HANA, should I say.
Absolutely.
Okay, so another quick demo, hopefully. So this is just on HANA Views. So we're just intermingling, sort of points with these different ways of connecting to HANA. In terms of HANA Views, so let's see a couple of ways to connect into those views. If I can find it, there it is. There are many of the HANA views, but many of the types of HANA views actually come across in a format that is very table-like, and so we can use our table tool in many instances. On others, however, we have a specific HANA read tool. Actually, I'm just going to do the simpler version here. And basically what we can see here is this is similar to the tool you've just seen, like for the table tool or for the report tool for T-codes. It's very simple. There are lots of standard. This is a standard HANA view, and we can search within the HANA system for those views. Obviously, Google is your friend here too, so you can get the right view. There will also be custom views that are built for your organization. What you get is the metadata, and you can pick exactly the details that you're interested in here, and then filter on, as you can see, a plethora of any of those columns, any of those fields to get the data you're interested in. This particular view is, as you can read, is a trial balance. I've actually already run it because it takes a minute or so to run, so just to accelerate it. But I did want to show you one extra functionality. We sort of saw it in the last example. What we can do, obviously our tools extract data from SAP and can push that data downstream into the workflow where it can be manipulated and used within Alteryx. But also we can control within Alteryx what happens in the tool. All of our tools have this S anchor, which is a dynamic input anchor. You can see what I've done is I've created a filter, and that filter is for company code. And instead of having just one company code, I can run it for multiples, okay? And the same is true, say, for T-codes or for whatever. We can pass those values in. It doesn't have to be a text table, by the way. It could be, it could be any input, an Excel or even a table read from SAP itself to get the full list of company codes. So we can pass those in, and it will repeatedly run this trial balance for each one, combine the output, and as you can see here, we have a combined output for all of them. Now that's one way of working this. You can work it on your desktop, but I promised you before that I'd like to show you what it looks like on the server. Okay, so what we can do is use the server in many ways, but two ways you can do it is to push this workflow, say, up to the server and schedule this workflow to run automatically. And this especially works well when you've got this input, because then we can make this more dynamic. So we can say, hey, look, I want to calculate what this particular period is, so that I don't have to go in and manually maintain it, what this particular date is, what's today's date, etc., etc. So we can be very, very dynamic about how we run this and very flexible. Another way of running it is using something called an analysis app. The way you do that is, this is pretty much the same flow, same connectivity to the HANA view. But what we do is we allow users, and this is maybe non-SAP users, to access this data where appropriate, of course, using an application. So what we do is we build an application here, and of course this is very simple. It's just extracting the data. But if you can imagine this as the extraction plus a whole number of tasks and manipulations to give an output that's meaningful for the business user, then when we flick across into the Alteryx server, we can publish that particular workflow, that particular app, into the server. And when we look at this, we can run it. And it runs, because of the way we've set it up, with a drop down. So we can say, hey, what we're going to do is which company code, and obviously you can make the questions more relevant and more pretty for the business users, but this is, hey, which company code do you want this to run for? I can select from a list if necessary, or add text, or whatever it may be, whatever the design is, and I can run it directly from within the server as a business user. The business user doesn't need to know how to connect to SAP. They don't need to know anything about the view. They don't need to know about the manipulations that, as a designer, you may have made within the workflow. All they need to know is which company code they're interested in, and they receive the output that they need, as you can see, perfectly timed, as an Excel, which they can then just download to local machine to see their values. And here it is. Okay, so hopefully that's given you some ideas. Back to the slideshow. Next section is, again, around public and private cloud. Rise and grow. I'll let Darren take it from there.
Yeah, I would not too much to say about these topics, but just, we're hearing, certainly when we're talking to our colleagues at Alteryx, the words RISE in particular, SAP RISE, are being used more and more when we're having early conversations. And just want to demystify what these are. I think SAP RISE is essentially it is SAP's S/4HANA Cloud Private Edition product. Okay, so this is the cloud-based edition product, which is very similar in scope and extensibility to that of the on-premise SAP S/4HANA product, with some additional services built around it. Okay, so RISE with SAP is more of it's an offering that incorporates the SAP S/4HANA Cloud Private Edition. And as we described already, hopefully you can sense this today, is that the private edition is fully functional SAP S/4HANA. So our T code kind of capability at the end already showed you works fully. Our ability to work with tables works fully. Our ability to work with HANA views, etc., etc. Okay, Grow with SAP is another one of these bundles, if you like, or offerings from SAP, which is really targeted at smaller companies, so not large enterprises. And this is a bundle that is underpinned by SAP S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition, which, as I described previously, is the core capability of S/4HANA is still there, but the extensibility, the way we interact with it, is slightly more limited. And for this, we have particular capabilities around using OData or the Fiori apps, which we'll come to still, or even our HTML RPA capabilities as a mechanism to interact with it. So if you hear RISE, it's really talking about SAP S/4HANA, and it's talking about the private edition. If you hear the word Grow with SAP, then we're talking about SAP S/4HANA. It's the public edition, which is a little bit more limited in terms of scope, capability and extensibility.
Perfect, perfect. So let's show a little bit of the, we've seen a bit of what it looks like on-prem, or if you like, the private cloud. So let's see what it would look like in the public cloud, where it's a little bit more tied down. One way in, as you can see here, is the Fiori Apps. Okay, so let's see how that might look if we wanted to pull them into Alteryx. Okay, I'm actually going to start just by showing you what a Fiori app looks like. So this is the console, if you like, where you can, as a business user, may come in. As Darren mentioned before, I think that this is sort of the cloud version, if you like, or the HTML version of the SAP GUI. It gives you access to your data as a business user. You run these apps, these in old speak, I guess, T codes, but these processes. One of which, for instance, is the supplier invoice list, which you can see here. And basically, you can be specific about the company code you're interested in, or the year. It's the usual sort of parameterization. Okay. When you run this, obviously, it's going to go off to HANA, assuming you're logged on, and bring back the data that's relevant for you in here. Which is great. It's quick, as you see. It's the ability there then is you can download it and manipulate it. Obviously, if you want to use that in Alteryx, you've got to then upload again. It's nice to get away from that two-step process, and here's how. The vast majority of these apps are actually services within the S/4HANA system, and you can see the app itself has an ID. I'm going to show, I think Darren mentioned earlier, just how many of these apps there are. Okay, even standard ones, let alone ones that your own company may have searched. I'm in as you can see, the Fiori App reference library. This is SAP's standard reference library, and I can go and search for my app that I've just run, and here it is. That supplier invoices list. Okay, so we get in here a whole detail about it, but the important bit for us in terms of connecting to it is the service that's behind it. And you can see here it's an OData service. Okay, so this OData service, if you like, is the guts of this this app. And if I copy this, I can now flick over to our Alteryx system, and we can connect to that. Okay, so starting again, exactly the same as we did before with a T code, but this time with a Fiori app, we connect to our system. This time, I'm not going to go to the directly or the GUI version of the my S/4 HANA system. I'm going to go to the OData connection. Okay, same principle. You still got to log on. You still got to establish your credentials. You can see that was good. And now I'm going to use this OData read solution. Okay, and we can search in here, and you can see it's talked to my system. It's brought back huge list, which represents obviously that huge list you've just seen in the library over on SAP. So these are all standard connectivity, standard services. And if I search for my particular one that I've just looked at, then you can see that contained within that we have actually 5 different outputs, if you like. The one we want is the middle one, but you can see if it's a little small, but the others are around the master data of that app. So, for instance, giving some help on the values, i.e., the descriptors against values. Let's run or select one of these. That's the one that actually runs the app, and if we open up in here, you can see the outputs, the fields that gives. Okay. Now, again, as per all our other tools, you can select exactly the outputs you're interested in. Okay. You can filter on any of these. So let's filter on fiscal year. I'm going to add a blank filter this time because I can just simply type it in. That's cool. Equally, maybe we want a particular company code like we did just now on the app. So we can say, hey, here's a blank filter for that. We don't need that one. Managed to get one too many. Bear with me, sorry. But we do want a company code in here. Once we've done that, we selected exactly the data we want. Again, we just add an output, a downstream tool for for us to pass that data in Alteryx. This is again just a browse tool, but it could be, it could be an output to Excel or anywhere we like. Then you can see it's run that particular service, that OData service, which is behind the Fiori app, and it's passed that data very quickly into Alteryx, ready to use. Now, what's great here is of course we can do that. That's obviously removed one of the steps. We don't have to download and upload. Okay, so it's a direct access. But what's great, again, we can be very dynamic about this. So say we don't just want it for 1 year, we want it for more than 1 year, then what we can do is we can say, look, let's create an input. Here it is, fiscal year is 2020, okay? I'm going to make this true, and this is one of the features of all our tools, is that we can split up the calls. We can make those separate calls, and instead of just 2020, I'm going to do 2021, 2022, and of course we can add as many filters as we wish, but that's going to be able to pass those into the app, into the solution here. It's going to, because it's in the right format, these columns are what are expected for the dynamic input. You can see those columns match the columns here. Then when I run this now, it's not going to run once, but it's going to run 3 times. And not only is it going to run 3 times, but it's going to do all the work and pull all that data together for you and bring it out as one single output. Okay. So back to the slides. So the final section really is around data migration. I know Darren's keen to tell you all about it.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, so what we've covered to date is really relevant for those of you who are already running SAP S/4HANA or maybe started thinking about the journey to S/4HANA. Some of the questions we've had to the chat of asking about, what adaptations to workflows could be required, and there's lots of variables in there for us to consider. So we will follow up with you guys who've asked us questions separately. One of the key things we've seen is that in any big SAP implementation project, the migration of data from one system to another, even an SAP system to another SAP system, soon hits critical path. And there's a very time-consuming, expensive part of the project. Now, Alteryx, with all its capability, is actually a fantastic tool for analyzing, cleansing, working with manipulating data. Hopefully most of you will have seen Alteryx and be working with it on a regular basis. Now, once you apply the DVW capability for us to be able to extract data from these different SAP systems, as well as load data into different SAP systems and pull that together into Alteryx, what we have is a really interesting opportunity to reduce the cost, the time, and risk associated with an SAP data migration itself. There's a bunch of content on here, but I think maybe, Ian, if we just move through the slides, it'll be easier for the guys to see what we're talking about. Thanks. So here we're looking at a scenario where we're going to automate some of the migration activity through Alteryx and DVW, and therefore in the middle of the screen here we have Alteryx Designer with our ACS for Alteryx Designer down on the desktop. So this is where we're going to be building and testing those workflows to either extract, maybe also to write data. We're going to be using Alteryx Server to allow us to automate this process within a time frame that is meaningful to us, maybe outside of business hours, because these migrations of data can take long periods of time. We're then going to also be using our software to both extract data from your source SAP ECC system to get ready to prepare the data, ready for the migration. Maybe you want to cleanse and update the data, and maybe even configuration data in your old SAP ECC system before we even start moving to the new world. So we have the ability to extract that data, right? We can also then build workflows, and we have a number of these standard templated workflows that allow you to both extract data from any object, any migration object in SAP ECC into Alteryx. You then need to put your hats on here, maybe bring in your SIs to help you with the cleansing and manipulation of that data. And then we have a whole series of templated workflows that allow data to be loaded into the target SAP system, predominantly using IDOC in this particular case here. So essentially, you could do the whole migration the extraction, the cleansing, the filtering, the analysis, the loading, the reporting, the reconciliation, everything from within the Alteryx platform. All right. Now, you may have the appetite for that, or you may not, but you may sort of get benefit from individual parts of it. So even if you're going to use maybe SAP's own migration workbench to load data from into the target SAP S/4HANA system, there's a lot to be gained from understanding the differences in the data, and maybe using Alteryx and DVW to help with the ongoing reporting of the progress of the migration as it's taking place. What we see so often is the business sponsors having to pour over massive spreadsheets of data and then sign off and say, yeah, okay, that migration is complete. You've got no idea what you're signing off against. So with Alteryx and DVW in this context here, we can really simplify that whole process for our users. And yeah, and this highlight here says transparency is the heart of the process. So we have capability to reconciliations with our own tools at a tabular level. So you can say, okay, this is the data that was in that particular table in ECC. This is what we chose to migrate as part of our Alteryx workflow. This is what has been migrated successfully over to SAP S/4HANA, and then we can do reconciliation workflows to do comparisons between the two systems, right down at the tabular level if you need to. We also, Ian, if you could just maybe flip back to the other slide with the this one here. We have a whole host of accelerators. So these, imagine, are predefined workflows to help you use Alteryx and DVW to start making advances in your migration literally from day one, right? So we don't have to employ the army of developers. We don't have to run all those workshops. We just say, actually, I know I'm going to need to migrate customer data from one system to the other system, right? Just show me the data I have in ECC today. Yeah, sorry, can you go back to the other slide again with the example, the mining company on it. Sorry, mate. On what? Yeah, perfect.
Sorry, I'm backwards and forwards.
No, it's okay. I was very unclear. I was very unclear. So here's an example. This is a real life example. We're hoping to get a case study around this shortly, so we can talk very specifics. But this is an SAP ECC to SAP S/4HANA data migration. Alteryx and DVW Analytics were the enabling technologies to support the migration, the reconciliation and reporting all around it. Now, the highlighted elements are the key ones here. So this is delivered at 1/3 of the cost of the standard approach. If you've done migrations before, you know there's armies of people normally involved in this, and you don't necessarily need it using this new way of doing things. And the time savings and cost, 25% of the expected timeline. So much, much, much faster, right? So I think it's something, if you are in the process of thinking about your move to SAP S/4HANA and you're looking about what my whole migration is going to look like for you, I would strongly recommend you at least consider what Alteryx offers and what DVW offers. And it could be for DVW, it may just be reconciliation and reporting you're interested in, or it could be the whole migration end to end. Okay, thanks.
Perfect. So lots of possibilities there, lots of flexibility, and you can dip into different aspects of it, of course. Let me show you just some of those live-ish. I'm not going to run them because they can take a little bit longer than others, because we're talking about masses of data, obviously. But let me show you first, if I can find it, one of those templated workflows. So in this workflow here, you can see it's a template for bringing customer data out. It's pulling data from all the main tables, the specific customer tables within your system, ready to push across into S/4HANA. You can see it looks complex here, but within this macro here, there's even more complexity. I can assure you, if I can just open that. There we go. You can see that there's a massive complexity. Okay, so this is this basically the reason it is so complex is to ensure that we not only pull out all the relevant data that's relatable and interesting for what the user needs, but also it pulls out all the data that maybe there are additional Z fields within your table structures rather than just the standards. Obviously, if there are other developments, then yeah, there needs to be a little bit of work to do that, but that's not too bad. As you've seen already, pulling data from tables isn't too bad. But this really gives you flexibility, and as Darren mentioned, a real head start. It's a real true accelerator to get you up and running. Day one, you can be looking at the data rather than working out what your plan is. You can be starting very, very quickly and without a huge amount of SAP knowledge. You don't need ABAP to write code, etc., etc. The second piece I want to show you is just a workflow. Again, this is just a standard workflow, one of ours. It's not necessarily the way you would set up on these things, but it shows you the different aspects of extracting the data. This is very specific to extracting some condition data. Okay, so we're pulling condition data out, and these can be applied, by the way, in the process of your data migration. Don't forget, it's not just as simple as a lift and shift. These things take time. So ECC maybe is still running for days, weeks, months whilst you're doing the migration, and therefore there will be a delta. And it's processes like this that can pick up those deltas and keep maybe your S/4HANA system up to date during the process of migrating. So imagine we've extracted our data. We know exactly the information we want. So that's the extract phase. We brought that across into Alteryx. Now, what we can do next, of course, is use the power of Alteryx. There's so much we can do here to cleanse the data, to improve the data, to prepare the data so it's structured correctly for S/4HANA. At this point, generally, you probably draw a line and maybe persist this data somewhere. An SQL server, or maybe Excel's, or whatever it may be. But there'll be a breakpoint to do some checking. However, on this particular flow, we're pushing it all the way through. You can imagine this automation. We've done all the work. We've prepared it and changed what's necessary, and we've pushed across over into S/4HANA. So we're connecting via iDocs. You can see our iDoc tool here, and the iDoc allows us then to push data across into S/4HANA and gives us even, I've already run this, but you can see it tells us exactly which iDoc has been pushed across. So we've got traceability once it hits the S/4HANA side. Okay, so very structured, very flexible tool that gives you, that transparency, firstly, but also speed of change. The ability to improve. Obviously, it's very easy to go from a dev system, building out these flows, and then moving them simply by changing the systems that we're pointing at, the ECC system and the S/4HANA system, to our QA systems or our production systems. So you're using exactly the same. There's a consistency too. So even though it's quicker, even though it's more transparent and you're involving more, it's also de-risking the whole situation. The final thing I'm going to just show you now is just that reconciliation you may have picked up on Darren mentioning there. We have a specific tool, and this is a very, very simple example, but hopefully it shows you that we're not very good at naming things. It's called the ACS reconciliation tool. Guess what it does? But what it does do is it takes two data sets. You can see this is the bank tables on both ECC and S/4HANA. Again, I've logged on to two different systems here, so one is coming from one is coming from the other. We feed them into the reconciliation tool, and what that does is at a row by row, but also field by field basis, compares the two sets of data. And so it can tell you a little bit like a join tool, which ones are missing either on the ECC side or on the S/4HANA side, but also it will look line by line at how they're misaligned. So it can say, look, on one side, the bank name was different to the bank name on the other, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so we can see exactly that left and right values have mismatched. Therefore, we can see exactly where the mistakes have been made. And do something about it very quickly. Okay, so that's a whirlwind tour of everything HANA. We'd like to thank you very much. Darren, do you want to add anything more?
No, Ian, thank you very much for the demonstrations. They're really good, actually. And thanks, everybody, for your interest in the questions. My fingers are starting to bleed now. So if I haven't responded to the questions during the session here, I will, myself and Ian will follow up after the webinar. But I really appreciate the interest, and hopefully, yeah, we've piqued your interest in what we're offering here.
Fantastic. So that's the end of the webinar. Thanks for your attentions, and hopefully we'll see you next time.